Hey, so thanks, Michael, and thanks to Casual Connect for having us here. For those of you that have never seen or heard Roblox, every month, tens and fifties of millions of kids around the world come together to play and create and imagine and storytell together at Roblox, where all of the 3D content has been created by a user community of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of creators. The recent number on engagement are really exciting. We've gone over 55 million monthly active players. Those players are deeply engaged to the tune of over 500 million hours per month. So that's about 10 hours per player. That's distributed around the world, and more it's Roblox is moving to a point of both good saturation with both boys and girls. We're at about 60% boys, 40% girls, played in just about every country. And to put that 500 million hour number into perspective, that's more time than is spent playing with physical Lego bricks around the world, with Lego's published stats. It's more time and it's creative, immersive time than a TV network on a Saturday. So things are getting pretty significant.
That's awesome. What are some of your favorite games, and who's building the games?
The creators on Roblox tend to be creators who grew up playing Roblox and then have moved from casual development to full-on development to groups of 2 or 3 to studios with 8 or 10 creators. They tend to be between the ages of 12 and 30, although we have all age ranges. And they're starting small companies now on the platform. Some examples of some of my favorite games, and we call them experiences because a lot of what happens on Roblox is not competitive. It's social hanging out, it's doing things together, and we have a thesis around doing things together. Classics on Roblox are things that you might not think would be games. Running away from a natural disaster with your friends every 3 minutes, whether it's a tornado or a hailstorm or a tidal wave, and socializing in the process. Or classic experience on Roblox is work at a pizza place. It's been played over 500 million times, and you know, it's almost like playing house or a restaurant in a virtual 3D environment. You can be a cook, you can be a delivery driver, you can serve the customers, and kids will do that all day long. A lot of the experiences involve creation themselves, so there's a bit of a meta idea where we have a giant developer community making experiences, and then many of the experiences themselves involve creation. So one of the experiences on Roblox is called Design It, where once again on kind of a roving cycle, there's a design challenge and players assemble costumes with clothing and hats and virtual items. And then there's a voting period where everyone votes on who fulfilled that theme the best in that 3 minutes. And the themes are everything from Halloween to flower power, that kind of thing. So there's just an amazing long tail of rich experiences.
Great, amazing. How does the ecosystem work, and how does the monetization work?
Yeah, so our whole philosophy at Roblox is to engage with the community and use their creative skill to make our platform better. And we've gone through various cycles, starting initially from the fun and the content, which is all user-generated. So there's well over 20 million experiences that have been created, and every month almost 1 million creators make experiences. That kind of belief in the power of our community has moved into the virtual economy as well. And the economy on Roblox is driven by developers building freemium experiences that have interesting ways of essentially absorbing virtual currency. So in work at a pizza place, players can buy a motor scooter to help them deliver pizzas. And as with any freemium game or experience, a very small portion will buy virtual Robux, spend it in the game, and then the developer can take those Robux, accumulate them, and cash them out. In Bird Simulator, once again, innovative freemium gameplay, small portion of the players decide they want to shortcut the trajectory from being a sparrow to being an eagle, and they can spend virtual currency to do that. The top developers on the platform then collect virtual currency, and they use that to fund their creation. We sprung upon this idea of this virtual economy about 4 years ago, when more and more developers, when they went off to college, had to go get regular jobs and they couldn't keep working on Roblox. So we said, oh my gosh, how do we let these devs keep working? What it has turned into now is an economy that this year is going to power several $2 million developers. Wow. And so it's starting to get more serious. Someday we'll power $10 million developers.
Wow, sounds amazing. So you said some of the developers they develop other games. What would you advise people here in the audience who might want to consider developing games on the Roblox platform?
It's a place where new and innovative gameplay really rises to the top. We're big believers in kind of a fair automated discovery, so we don't hand curate or hand boost, maybe like the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Games and experiences rise algorithmically based on number of players or their engagement or their retention. And we find more and more that really interesting things that we never thought would be games start rising to the top. So an example would be a hide and seek simulator. It's pretty innovative. It's added some interesting angles to playing hide and go seek in a virtual environment. That rose to the top. So I would say be innovative on the platform. We're not a good platform right now to make $50 million if you have a dream of building that giant studio, but we're a great platform for that up and coming indie dev who wants to potentially strive for the multi-million-dollar type game.
Cool, and you also have a good amount of hobbyists.
We have every month hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, almost 1 million kids of all ages being inspired to learn to code, learn to create games, get motivated to go on to college and study either comp sci or game design. So there's an enormous amount of implicit learning that happens when people have this environment to create in.
Awesome. So you started on the PC platform, and now you're on mobile, console, on Xbox, and you're also doing stuff on VR. How do the different platforms kind of work together? What's the mix of that from a consumption point of view?
We have a thesis that there's a certain class of game or experience that is, you can almost think of it as the 3D equivalent of a web page or something, in that it's 3D, it's multiplayer, it's physically destructible, it's based on avatars. It's ultimately what the Metaverse will be. It's just we're very, very early before that. And we have a thesis that this type of content works differently on different devices. On a phone, it's very hard to get that full immersion. It's very difficult, and we have to use dynamic thumb pads and possibly auto camera. Whereas when we go across the spectrum, we get easier and more immersion, but harder to carry around in your back pocket, all the way to on VR, the most immersive experience with the most feeling of presence. So our thesis is that this subset of games and experiences that are 3D, avatar, multiplayer, physically destructible, non-Twitch based, more social, can be played across all these devices simultaneously. And we need best of class avatar control, camera control, game design on all of those platforms. Phone is the most difficult to make that type of experience work, and especially because phone is so spontaneous. VR is very difficult just because we're very early in the technology cycle, and all of our dreams of the Matrix and the Metaverse are going to take some indeterminate amount of time to get there. So in between, we have consoles and PCs that are somewhat of a good balance.
And the game developed are actually on a PC or also on mobile?
So Roblox Studio, we're big believers in, for professional game development, the full-on game IDE, big screen mouse is going to be the way to go for a while. Yeah, there's a lot of development environments that have mobile accessories or VR accessories, but ultimately, hardcore work we think still belongs on the PC for a while. That said, what platforms a developer will target for when they start building their experience more and more is starting to be multi-platform. A lot of the new experiences on Roblox out of the gate are hitting really big numbers on phone, tablet, console, computer at the same time. And a big aspect of the development environment is allowing someone to emulate as many of those devices as possible while they're sitting at their desktop. So phone emulation, memory performance emulation, all the way from phone to big, Xbox in one place is really important to us.
From a consumption point of view, where do you see the biggest growth? Is it on, I think you saw phenomenal growth on mobile over the last year. Do you think that's going to continue, or?
Ultimately for us, we've passed the point of daily usage where more users use Roblox on phones per day than they do on desktop devices. And that was a really big pivot for us, considering 4 years ago we were PC Mac platform. Part of that, I believe, is sticking to that notion that 3D, avatar-based, multiplayer, immersive type environments can run anywhere. And part of that was sticking to the notion that these do need to run on all devices simultaneously, so that a phone player can play with a PC player, can play with a console player. So ultimately the phone for the next foreseeable future is where all the big the higher usage numbers will be, until someday, AR and VR goggles becomes the way we all interact. Right,
that sounds great. What are some of the upcoming innovations or features on the Roblox platform?
So it's a lot to work on. Clients on all devices, behind the scenes, a social graph to allow people to find their friends and play, a development environment, a cloud to make that all run together. We're really focused on the phone right now, and we believe there's still an amazing way to go in how does what we would call a VR experience run on the phone. How do you control? How does the camera work? What's automated? So the phone, more and more, you'll see us offering portrait mode, offering automatic avatar navigation, click to move, auto camera, all the things that will take an immersive 3D experience and make it run really well there. And then I would say another one, we have a belief that we want a 14-year-old new game developer who pushes something to the cloud to have that run immediately on all devices. We also want that content to run immediately in any language. So besides visions of machine translating text between users, ways of dynamically translating 3D content. So if I make an interesting game, I may decide that I want my stop signs automatically translated into whatever language the player is playing in, to ultimately fulfill a dream that if I'm in the US and you're in South Korea and you're on a phone and I'm on English, we can still have we can still play together regardless of language or platform.
Is that currently already available, or is that one of the upcoming?
We're working on that right now.
Okay, that sounds super exciting.
Yeah.
As competitive gameplay is less of a focus, and that's one of the key driver on the eSports streaming side. Is streaming still important?
We believe there's a huge opportunity in streaming. There's a lot of big Roblox Twitch streamers. They tend to be younger still. What's exciting about the platform is the opportunity to ultimately offer both video streaming as well as immersive streaming. And so we're huge believers in streaming, and we think ultimately streaming will be, 3D type streaming where you or I might be able to pick our location and watch our favorite players wherever they might be. So we think there's a huge streaming future.
Cool. And that gets us to kind of, how do you see Roblox becoming kind of a Metaverse hub for any kind of social interaction?
Yeah, so one of the things we've done that we believe the Metaverse will ultimately have is the notion that when there's really good content, that content needs to be dynamically replicated and spawned so that hundreds of thousands of people can play the same content. It's the roller coaster situation where way back in Second Life, there were amazing things and only 32 or 64 people could play them. So when, in books like Ready Player One, there's a mix of contiguous world space along with replicated world space, and that's been really important for us. So when someone makes a really interesting roller coaster theme park tycoon on Roblox, even though maybe 50 people can be on one of those at the same times, we can dynamically create 1,000 or 2,000 of those in the cloud, and people and their friends can come together and play those. So one of the aspects we think is a mixed kind of flat topology with dynamically spawned stuff. The other will be just really waiting for VR hardware to come in its own. And we have to be really cognizant of the speed of this. There's been so much hope for the last 30 years around VR hardware, and then I would say an acceleration of that hope in the last year or two. I mean, the market's really expanded. There is possibly, in looking at that roadmap, there's possibly still ways to go. And I liken it to the Apple Newton or the Palm Pilot. Everyone knows what the device is going to be. Everyone knows how it's going to feel. And then we see these early, really trying hard attempts to get it there. And then finally along comes the iPhone and everyone says, that's it. Now this thing can really take off. So for me, I don't think we haven't seen the VR equivalent of the iPhone yet. And when we see that, I think there'll be a lot of acceleration.
And then platforms like yours obviously will tremendously benefit from this.
Roblox is already playable on Oculus, for example, or Vive, and it's a social experience. So in a VR player, when I play Roblox on VR, it is by far mind-blowing. Even places that have been created 6 or 8 or 10 years ago, the very first Roblox places that are dusty and old and simple, going in and, oh my, it's all new. So it really is, we will benefit enormously as that new hardware comes online and makes these mobile experiences that's hard to get into simultaneously deeply immersive.
But since it's a modern platform, it's continuous. I mean, you mentioned, I think, Linden Labs earlier. They came out with a brand new platform targeted VR, but for you, it's continuous.
I believe their new platform may have had to do more with technical debt or restrictions. Linden never had a phone client, for example. So to get to VR and those things, they maybe had to start over. We're huge believers in refactoring and iterating and not having technical debt, because forking a platform when you get to really big scale, it's very difficult.
What's the most exciting, I guess, content you've seen on VR on Roblox today?
I'm trying to think what I feel is the most. For me, we have seen less dedicated VR stuff yet. Our developers, to some extent, follow their passion, and to some extent, they follow where all the players are. So we haven't seen them, I think, push the limits. For me, the excitement is more playing existing content that's hyper-social. So existing content where there are a lot of people around me. They're all interacting with me. There are spaces where there are thousands and thousands of people. I would say the social aspect's the most exciting.
So I guess the language translation will be very helpful for growing Roblox globally more, right? And what's your plans into penetrating Asia even further than what you currently have?
So we're freemium. We are, the exact opposite of a machine zone in that we don't buy traffic. We have to grow virally. We have to grow at scale by friends inviting their friends to come and play, more like a social network than a game even. We can see in Europe right now relative to the US, we have about a quarter of the usage, even though the demographics are very similar. And so we can see the restraints on that social growth because of language. So we have to grow primarily virally. Same in South Korea, Japan, and China. Definitely opportunities to boost in certain ways with paid traffic. And we can see the potential demand. In South Korea, in English, we've hit the top 30 on the Google Play Store. So that's been a strong signal for us that we got to get this language thing working.
Cool. How many languages are you planning to support?
Well, ultimately, we are a crowdsourced platform. So ultimately, those companies that we see that have done a crowdsourced type situation, they're the companies that end up with the 300 languages. So I would look to, Facebook as a great example of building translation through crowdsourcing.
Awesome. What's your vision for Roblox, let's say, looking out for 5 years?
Yeah, our current vision is we see a new category for kids of all ages, a category that will sit parallel to games and toys and social networking and media. It's the fifth category, which for us is right now human co-experience and will ultimately be the Metaverse. So we believe this is a new up-and-coming category. We'd like to be a leader in that category, and we aspire to create family brands, Pixar, Lego, Disney, in other categories. We would like to be that type of brand with that type of significance in this category.
Are you looking into leveraging some of the brands you generated on the Roblox platform outside, either through merchandising or, any kind of TV shows, movie, any stuff like that?
Yeah, so when we think about what Roblox is, it's millions of creators where we provide the platform, but we don't provide the content, we provide the tools. And a licensing thing must be done with a lot of empathy towards that. So we've taken a very gentle step on the licensing side in the toy market, where we've made the decision there's no Roblox characters, there's only avatars and characters that are famous or that have been created by our community that we can amplify through the toys just as they amplify on our platform. So our toys, our action figures, which are in Toys R Us, Target, and Walmart, are now some of the top selling action figures in the country. And it's really wonderful because we're taking, work at a pizza place is a toy right now. There are 2 avatars from that, the motor scooter, people can buy that experience. And then the developers can participate in the royalties. So when we look at movies or TV, we're being very conservative, but we would think in that same way. How would we feature the works of our creators and use this incredible IP generation system to power that?
Cool, awesome. So thank you very much for coming here and giving all those insights.
A free-form tool, and they have a certain percentage of people have the ability to do something inappropriate, those bad actors. And if you don't sort of curate, what tools do you have or processes do you have there to stop sort of inappropriate content or construction appearing onto the site that's designed for kids?
Yeah, so we have more people working in Roblox in moderation than all the rest of the company combined. And it's a huge thing for us, the family safety angle. All content right now that goes live on Roblox, images, sounds, all of that, still goes through human moderation to make sure that's appropriately. More and more for 12 and under players, we're moving to all content being reviewed by the 13 and up community, even though all of the assets have gone through that, to once again make sure that's just a completely curated experience. So we feel there's an enormous opportunity to figure out more and more how to do social, how to do user-generated content in this 9 through 12 segment well. Disney and Lego have had a hard time of it. We believe doing it well is a big opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. David, this is fascinating. As a developer, if I want to start working on your platform, what's the best area to go into? What would you like to see us work in?
I believe there's a huge opportunity for one of the toughest areas that we're going after right now, but also the most opportunity, is 12 to 14-year-old girls. And we're still 60-40 boys. We still lean, slightly more, especially on the desktop for them. But more and more, we're seeing developers starting to create experiences that might lean in that direction, more along the Kim Kardashian covet fashion episode type things that are both social and aimed in that direction. I think that's pretty greenfield right now. I think the whole building for mobile first with games that will span everywhere is also a big opportunity on our platform.
Okay, with that, we've reached time, so thank you very much. Round of applause for Solomon and David. Thank you very much.